Section 2. You will hear a talk on the radio about letter writing. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
And now for the last part of today's programme, I'd like to welcome author Erica Winter, whose recent book entitled Say It in a Letter has already sold 10,000 copies. Over to you, Erica.
Thanks, Mark. In today's world, it's easy to think that letters are a thing of the past. We rarely write them, and when we do, it's usually to a bank or an organisation of some kind. We no longer tend to write letters to our friends. Yet this is something I think we will come to regret. It's what I call the lost art of letter writing. For one thing, letters used to consist of more than writing. Looking through some of my mother's old letters to me recently, I came across several that also had drawings in them. This wasn't uncommon in the past. Photos took much longer to print than they do now, and so people often drew something to show what they meant. In fact, my mother still does this, not only in her letters, but also sometimes on the envelopes. Another important thing about letters is that they represent one side of a conversation. And before the time of emails, these conversations could centre on people's deepest secrets. As a child, letters would come through our door each morning from relatives and friends. As we got older, they became more personal. This made the letters important. It made you want to keep them. The ones I treasure I still have. They're tied up with ribbon and safely stored in a shoebox in my attic. I get them out from time to time and read them, and it's amazing because they remind me of how I felt all those years ago, what I was doing, who I was meeting, what I was looking forward to. And this is another thing about letters. They recreate the past rather like a diary. Yet they are more than that, because they invite a response. Emails will never tell us about the past in anything like the same way, unless we print them off and keep them. But who has time for that?
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen carefully and answer questions 16 to 20.
So, if you want to give letter writing a try, and in the years ahead you may be very glad that you did, here are a few important tips. First, using a pen and paper is very different from using a keyboard and a screen. We can't easily change what we write with a pen, and so letters show much more of the thought process of the writer. And to get those thought processes going, you really need to make sure that the room you write in is a quiet one. And this means removing all mobiles, computers, tablets, and other distractions. Second, it's much more inspiring to write on decent writing paper using a fountain pen than it is to use an old notepad and a ballpoint pen. so make sure you have the equipment you need. It shows that you've taken the trouble to present your letter in the best possible way. Also, your letter will stand the test of time. Cheap paper quickly falls apart. As I said earlier, a letter is really one side of a conversation, and because of this, you may be asking your recipient, that's the person receiving your letter, to give you some answers to problems that you have. So, in other words, use your letters as a tool. If you're worried about your job, for example, you can consult others about the things that are bothering you, and so get the sort of advice that you need. You need to practice to make this really work for you, though. You need to think carefully about the wording of each question that you ask, so that you get the answers you need. Unlike emails that we tend to write quickly without paying too much attention to wording, letters need patience and thought. And lastly, make sure you know how to begin a letter, where to put your address and the date, for example, and how to finish your letter, depending on your recipient. Should you say best wishes, or yours sincerely, or simply love from? The ending you use must be suitable, or you might offend people. This will be something some listeners may have forgotten, or never had the chance to learn in the first place.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now look at section 3.